Good morning, Top fans. It's Bill from TopFanRivalry here again, once again with another TopFanRivalry Clubhouse. This time, believe it or not, we got our Orioles edition. It looks like we're just staying in the American League East. I don't know what that is, but hey, we had our Yankees edition. Now we have our Orioles edition. So I want to welcome Dale to the Clubhouse. Welcome, Dale.
Yeah, welcome, and thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
I'm glad to have you.
Love to represent the American League East.
I'm glad to have you. I've been searching for Orioles fans. Apparently, there's like 16 or 18 of them left this season. No. No. So, Dale, what made you an Orioles fan?
So when I was 5, my grandmother from Los Angeles came out to visit me in the Baltimore area, and she had a love for baseball, and so I started watching it with her, and I instantly fell in love with baseball. At the time, I grew up in the DC area. There was no Washington team, so the Orioles were the closest team. So by first grade, I literally wore an Orioles shirt every day to school. Had the iron on Kelly, Kelly on the back of the jersey for my name. So we were able to, I just loved it, and I was representing. I was batting right or left with my friend, depending on which Orioles player I was representing, and down the playground. And so I just really loved it, and started playing baseball at that age, and fell in love with it.
All right, so you grew up in the DC area, so that was your home team. Have you had a chance to go to Nats Park yet too, or visit a game there?
Yeah, interesting enough, I was there on opening night when the stadium opened up. Business contacts, I got tickets to that. It was pretty crazy. The president was there that night, so the security was nuts. I was there an hour early, and I still got in like a half hour late to the game, by the time we got through the gates. But it's nice, but I'll tell you what, Camden Yards is one of the best stadiums in the country. And so Nationals Park wasn't to that level, I didn't think, but it was still pretty nice. And I enjoyed watching them on their World Series run too, kind of representing my National League side. But I'm a true Orioles fan at heart.
Yeah, I have to tell you a full confession. Outside of Dodger Stadium, which you know that I love, but some of the stadiums that I want to visit, Camden Yards is high up on that list.
Yep.
I've been outside of Wrigley. I've been inside of Fenway. Camden Yards and PNC Park in Pittsburgh just look like phenomenal places to watch a ball game.
Yeah, and I haven't been to a game at PNC Park. It looks really nice from the outside. I've been to the stadium, but you're absolutely right. Camden Yards is not a bad seat in the house, and just the city. And I was a little bummed when they built the new Hyatt behind there. Used to be the Bromo Seltzer clock tower, kind of there. It was blue, and it looked really neat. And they put a huge hotel right in front of it and blocked that out, but that's, I guess they're allowed to do that. But in general, yeah, it's just really nice. It's right close to the Inner Harbor. Just the stadium, and they've redone it. They've done it a few times. It's just a phenomenal place to watch a game.
Well, and I mean, it seems like Major League Baseball is doing that all around, right? I mean, go down to Petco Park. I mean, it's all kinds of like stuff around there now. And I mean, Dodger Stadium, you can't do that because it's up on a hill. But they were even talking at one point at Dodger Stadium using the parking lot, converting the parking lot into some high rises and stuff like that, hotels, and just shuttling people in like they used to do when they were in Brooklyn. And I'm like, nope, that's not gonna work. Not in Southern California. No,
not at all.
Nobody could do that.
No.
But okay, so give me
no
one.
Way.
So you grew up in that area. Give me one or two memories of being an Orioles fan. Maybe a game or two that you watched, something. Just give me a couple memories.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly what year it was, but I remember the time period. It's probably it's definitely in the mid 80s. The Orioles were in contention with the Milwaukee Brewers to win the division. That's back when there's only the East and the West division. And it was coming down to the last weekend, but the Orioles had to sweep the Brewers to do that, to pass them and to win the pennant. And so we went to a doubleheader. I got to go to a doubleheader, and it was awesome. And they won both games. It was just phenomenal. So it was down to the final game. But I just remember that I was in the cheap seat, so the beer was plenty. The crowd was going crazy, and a few fights along the way. it was just and as a kid, I was probably in my early teenage years at the time. It was just nuts watching it all. But I was such an avid fan, and to see the Orioles win both games. Unfortunately, I kind of remember this was Jim Palmer's last game, I believe. He pitched the next day and lost, and so they didn't make it. But that night, it felt like it was going to happen, and I was there for both games. It's just a full day of baseball is phenomenal.
And that it doesn't get any better when you got stuff like that, right?
Yep.
Those type of memories. Awesome. Now, having not
Oh,
been
can I
around,
give one more?
yeah, go ahead.
So I haven't been able to go as many games in the past, but just a couple years ago when the Orioles were in the playoffs against the Detroit Tigers. Oh shoot, what's his name? Big burly. He only played for the Orioles. He was a rental. He hit a triple to clear the bases to win the game. Playoffs is the loudest single, the loudest thing I've ever heard in my life. The whole stadium. In fact, many lifetime Orioles have gone to every game. So that stadium was never louder than at that point to win that game against the Tigers. This was about 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, and see, you led me to my next question. I have heard, I've met guys that have actually played for the Orioles. Knew a couple of guys that were in the farm system for them, and have some friends that are back east, and they say, you can go to a lot of ballparks, but man, when you go to Camden Yards and it gets loud, it gets loud.
Yeah.
That's true.
So I had someone right next to me, and we couldn't hear each other at all talk during the time. So, and we were yelling, and it didn't matter. It was so loud. So that was amazing. That was a fun game.
So there you go, Top Fans. If you're in Baltimore, stop by Camden Yards.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yep.
So,
and these days, your team will be well represented. Unfortunately, in Camden Yards, it's not too big of a home field advantage at this point in time.
Well, I have to tell you this. Don't feel bad. Several years ago, I was in the Bay Area, and I won't mention the team, but the A's. So I'm staying at a hotel right by the airport, at a hotel that's just right off the airport, and I'm having just one of those days in business that everything you touch turns to rust, right?
Yep.
And so the day before, a coworker of mine and I were walking in a small town called San Mateo. There was a restaurant that we like to frequent, and we're just walking down the street. Who walks by us but Ricky Henderson? And
oh wow, cool.
So yeah, we stopped, and my coworker says, Ricky, and he turns around, he shook our hand. Little guy, like you see him on TV, looks buff, but he had lost some weight. And so anyways, the next day we were both having a terrible day. We decided to go to the Oakland Coliseum, and the Yankees were in town, and he happens to be a Yankee fan. And so we go to Yankee A's game, and there's more Yankee fans there, and there's more Yankee memorabilia being sold than Oakland memorabilia. I couldn't believe it. That doesn't happen at Dodger Stadium.
That's how it goes. No. The Yankees travel well, man. Yep. Absolutely.
Those were those teams. Those were those those A's years too, where they were. The Texas was kind of running the division. Texas and Anaheim were kind of running the division, and the A's were just kind of the afterthought. So we bought tickets the day of, about 20 rows back from home plate. If you've ever been to the Oakland Coliseum, it's, I'm sure, a great place to watch football, but not so much for baseball.
Yep.
Just is what it is.
Yep.
All right. So
that's what I've heard.
So now we're going to go around the horn. Now we're going to test your Baltimore Orioles knowledge and where you want to go. And there's no wrong answer for this. So tell me, position by position, we'll start in catcher. If you could have anybody from any era, who is your all Orioles team? I obviously know who you're going to say at shortstop.
Yeah, we got that one covered.
You may also say that same person at third base too.
Right. Yeah.
So, but let's
we'll
start
go with them at shortstop.
Exactly. Let's start at catcher. Who do you got at catcher?
I'm gonna go with Rick Dempsey because I'm a product of the '80s, and he was the World Series MVP and had a lot of longevity. He was kind of the glue to that group and to that team. So I'm gonna go with Rick Dempsey. And didn't put up the best numbers necessarily, but phenomenal defensive catcher.
I would have said the same thing. He was great with the pitching staff, and he was a phenomenal backstop. Phenomenal backstop.
Yep.
Whatever you got offensively.
And great with the fans.
Was he really?
Yeah, he would put on the halftime shows where he would run around the bases and do the sliding thing. Like, he was kind of a ham, so he was always the guy that the front man for the fan interaction.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Go to first base. Who are we taking at first base?
Also, we're gonna stick with the '80s on that one. I'm gonna go with Eddie Murray. Just the same thing. Longevity, had a phenomenal career. I mean, you could go a lot of different ways there with Jim Gentile or Boog Powell or Palmero, but I'm gonna stick with I'm definitely gonna stick with Murray on that. Just he was the 3,000 hits and the 500 home runs. One of the few players to do that. Just very consistent.
I can't disagree with you on that. That's awesome. We actually were Eddie Murray lives out here in Southern California, and he was actually at a restaurant that a buddy of mine and I had some interest in one time. And I told my mom I couldn't go when he was down there, but I told my mom, I said, hey, go down there and meet this guy, say hi, blah, blah, blah. And so my mom goes down and she says, there's some guy there too named Eddie. He had big old hands, but everybody was just being so nice to him. Who was that guy? Like, oh,
Yeah.
mother. Awesome.
Poor mom.
Such a nice, she's like, he had such big hands and he was such a nice guy. Like,
He got a bad rap because he wasn't really good with the media, but I think with fans he had a pretty good reputation.
Love it, love it. You're nailing it. I love the fact that you mentioned Boom Powell. That guy had never seen a stairmaster or a treadmill, but man,
Nah,
he hit the ball.
Not exactly. He wasn't necessarily chiseled, but yeah, man, he hit the ball hard.
He's like Vogelsong over at first base.
Exactly.
For Milwaukee. Man, that guy dives, the ground goes, ouch.
It's amazing how some of these guys sometimes are a little bigger, man. There's phenomenal athletes that still can run fast. It's like, the Orioles have one of those right now, DJ Stewart. He's like, doesn't look like an athlete, but I mean, he can run around pretty good for that size and hit the ball hard. But
there you go. Love it. Who's at second?
I'm gonna go. It pains me again. A lot of different options there, but I'm probably gonna go with Roberto Alomar just because the Hall of Famer. And just it was only a few years, but man, he was great when those few years.
He made an impact, that's for sure.
Yep.
All right. Say his name at shortstop. We got to say
it. We got to say it. All right. Cal Ripken Jr. Absolutely.
We'll
That's about
Go ahead.
We got to put Brooks Robinson at third base.
Really?
You can't move. Yeah. No. So Brooks Robinson at third.
See, and I thought you would have stayed with the late 70s, early 80s and gotten to Sensei at third.
Yeah, so I didn't. Brooks Robinson, because I think he's probably the best fielding third baseman ever, in my opinion. From what I hear, again, is before my time. He was the announcer a lot for the Orioles broadcast a lot when I was growing up, and I met him. He's just a phenomenal guy. So yeah, just for a lot of reasons, you got to put him there.
Love it. Okay, so the outfield. Pick me 3 outfielders.
Oh, good. 3 outfielders. So I'm gonna go Frank Robinson. From the early years, phenomenal. Then I'm gonna go Brady Anderson, and Adam Jones.
Oh, great outfield. Yeah.
You got me. That was helpful because none of those really played left field, and left field's kind of a hole. Like I don't know who to pick yet. I didn't have a good left fielder specific. So 3 outfielders, I can go with those guys.
3 outfield. I mean, and I can tell you, Brady Anderson was the first guy that was kind of what I'll call the wild child, where you kind of didn't know what to expect when he opened his mouth. And he did a couple of things on the field that you were like, nowadays we look at him and go, okay, whatever. But back in the early 90s, we were looking at kind of going, what just happened?
Yeah, I know. And there's definitely some question marks around him. I mean, you go from, I don't know what his high was, but I think it was in the teens to hitting 50 home runs in a year. You definitely look pretty jacked all of a sudden. So, who knows what was going on there. But I got to meet him at an Orioles event down in DC. They did an event every year. And this was right when he got traded from Boston before he played for the Orioles. He hadn't really played in the majors yet. So he was a lot more humble, but he was still kind of wild there. It was fun, but he kind of starstruck there because he had, made it yet. But it was fun, it was just him and I and Mike Devereaux and one other kid in the back, kind of getting changed and dressed. Got to hang out with those guys for, for a little bit of time. And it was when I was towards the end of my high school career, so I was really, jacked about that. It was pretty fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, Brady Anderson he was kind of not as crazy as the Jim McMahon, but he was kind of that type of person that the league was starting to go, whoa, wait a second. It was kind of a little bit of a transition, right? I mean, you were coming out of the 80s where you had the Ricky Hendersons, you had, these guys that were very, like, they were athletic, but they didn't show as much emotion. Whereas Brady would show, he'd wear his emotions when he needed to. Okay, so a DH. What about a DH?
I'm gonna go with Harold Baines. I think he's one of the all-time best pure DH pure hitters, and he's actually from Maryland as well, the Eastern Shore of Maryland. So, Harold Baines is just a professional hitter.
I love watching that guy. That guy was always fun because when I was impressionable growing up, similar to you, that guy just always seemed to be on base when he was on.
Yeah.
I mean, when he was up.
Yeah, he hit for average, he hit for power, like somewhere, never at the top of the league, but always there, like consistently always there. Even when he played for the White Sox, I mean, he was just, man, he just hit. The guy could
play
until he was, even his later years, he was still on base machine.
So so if you've got 2 games where you need 2 starters, who are your 2 starters?
Probably Jim Palmer, obviously, the numbers he put up, and then I'm going to go Mike Messina.
Nice call. I was hoping you'd say Mike Messina. Nice call.
I
loved
watching him. It was tough watching him as a Yankee, but man, also phenomenal career. Again, he never, had just that incredible year, but he was consistent every year. Smart guy. I love it. I was a pitcher, so I just love the way he kind of manipulated batters with the different pitches he had, different arsenal. His arsenal seemed to do really good. And I watched him. I didn't get to watch Palmer, like I said, until the end of his career. So didn't see him in his heyday. And my memory is of him of losing that game. So it doesn't help his cause, but his numbers can't be denied.
But Mike Messina was that guy, though. He was the Tom Glavine, John Smoltz, Greg Maddux type of style pitcher, where he wasn't going to always overpower you, but wherever the catcher put his glove, he could hit there. And
absolutely,
he could still overpower you, but I mean,
I remember one memory I have is the one time they had the All-Star game in Baltimore, and it was Pedro Martinez started the game, and then Mike Messina was the next pitcher, and I think they struck out every batter, both of them this time, and mowed them. It just to start the game, first and second inning, just strikeout after strikeout, they mowed them down.
Good stuff. Just good stuff. All right, so you got to close out those 2 games. Who's your closer?
Oof. It was kind of a one-hit wonder, but I'm gonna go Greg Olson. He only had the 1 year, but he had such a devastating curveball. I think that thing dropped like 5 feet. It seemed like it started like eye level and still hit the dirt before it got to him, and had a good fastball. Again, I'm kind of inconsistent here because he didn't have longevity, but that 1 year, that the game was guaranteed once he went into the game.
I like that call because that's about the only person I could think of. The Orioles haven't been dominant in that arena, but let's be honest. I mean, there's only been a couple of really dominant closers in the last 20 years. I mean, there's a lot of guys that are good, don't get me wrong. But when Mariano Rivera came in, when Trevor Hoffman came in, when Eric, I swear I didn't use steroids, Gagne came in, those guys just shut the door, right? But there's not a lot of teams that have that. I mean, being a Dodger fan, when Kenley comes in, I'm kind of like, which Kenley are we getting? Are we getting the Kenley from 5 years ago? Or are we getting the Kenley of today?
It can be scary to ride. So I'll give an honorable mention to Zach Britton, because man, He's again with the Yankees, so it's hard to watch. But man, I've never seen. I don't know how you can throw a 97-mile-an-hour sinker. It's just insane. The movement on his pitch at 97 miles an hour. Sometimes it hurt him. You get like 3 infield hits in an inning because it just hit worm burners, basically swinging bunts. Because no one could get it, get under the ball against him. So, but he was dominant too there for a brief time.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. And he bounced around a little bit. Like you said, he chased the money, right?
Yep.
And
yep.
I have to tell you something. And possibly you just made me a partial Orioles fan, because I forgot how many Orioles great players there were, and there are so many more that we may not have mentioned. But I mean, you're talking Eddie Murray, you're talking Cal Ripken, Frank Robinson, Brooks Robinson. I forgot about Brooks Robinson for some reason.
Yeah.
Until you mentioned it, I'm thinking, oh man, you guys have had some phenomenal players. You guys play in a phenomenal stadium. To wrap this up, tell me, as an Orioles fan, and be honest,
Yep.
how difficult is it to play in the American League East when two thoughts, when you know that the Yankees and Red Sox are always going to get the publicity, one,
Yep.
or that most people like seeing the Yankees or Red Sox in it? I mean, how difficult is it to play in the American League East?
It's gotten both harder and easier at the same time.
Okay.
I thought the Orioles could compete at a fairly decent level before the Nationals. They came to DC. They divided the market, divided the revenue, and I knew that was an issue. So that's made it, I think, harder. Baltimore, Washington, for those people who aren't familiar with the area, they're probably only about 30 miles apart. And so now you have you're dividing, 6-7 million people. It used to be Baltimore's terrain used to go all the way. There was no one between them and Atlanta before, so they had a huge market. And now it's much smaller, so they have less resources. But I think George Steinbrenner passing the Yankees, I don't think they spend as much as they used to. They still spend a ton. I mean, look, you got that lineup. Don't get me wrong, no one's going to match them spending wise, but it's not quite to the obscene level as it was maybe 10 years ago. And Boston, same thing. I think they've shown a little more financial restraint. They had a really down year last year. They're better this year. But I think you can compete with those guys if you build smartly, and the Orioles weren't doing that. And I like the track they're on, despite their record right now. They've rebuilt their farm system. They're going to have prospects galore coming through. They want, I think, a top 5 farm system after having a bottom 5 a couple of years ago, and they've done some things with their international scouting. Opened up a camp in Dominican, so I think they're setting themselves up for longer term success now. And they got a lot of good young talent, and I like their team. I think there's some big holes, but I think they got one of the best potential outfields in the league. If they're all healthy. They don't have a second baseman. Third base is a question mark. So their infield could use some work. But Trey Mancini, playing at first and finding a place for Ryan Mountcastle as well somewhere. You really got some great young pieces. And then Rushman coming up. He's a top 5 prospect, and they got some phenomenal pitching prospects in DL Hall and Grayson Rodriguez, and just some guys that are top 10 pitching prospects in the league. So they just got to make it through. I was hoping they'd do a little bit better this year, but I'm hoping they don't trade any of the big pieces at this point, but they may. But I like the long-term success, the potential success. And I think they can compete, as Tampa proved that you can compete in the American League East if you're smart about it. Toronto has a good team too, so that's the problem. You don't have a real weak. The Orioles are the weak spot right now, so competing against powerhouses there. But the media is always going to love Boston and New York, and because they draw, and that's where the money is. That being said, there's a lot of people that love to hate them too. So yeah, they count me in on that. So watching Boston and New York go down, I don't mind it.
Listen, it drives me nuts. I'll be the first to tell you, it drives me nuts anytime Boston and New York are playing each other. That's Sunday Night Baseball. Both of
Yep.
those teams could be tied for the worst record in baseball, yet that's what we're going to see.
Doesn't matter.
It drives me batty. But
Yep.
I will say this, I think you guys are going in the right direction, because the farm system is where it's going to be at. I mean, we're seeing all these young guys, Biggio and Guerrero come up in
Guerrero.
Toronto,
Yep.
right? We're seeing the game shifting. You're seeing guys like Fernando Tatis, you know, and
Yep.
some of these older guys are starting to shift out. It's almost like hockey, where the game is moving a little quicker now, and you're seeing some of the older dogs ship out. And I think what I like best about the Orioles is they don't have the media attention that you have in New York or in LA or Boston. So they can lace it up every day and just play baseball. And if they've got the talent, they can sneak right past people without people knowing. Where
Exactly.
the day that Aaron Boone enters spring training, or Dave Roberts enters spring training, it's all about, you know, what World Series how many are you guys going to win 115 games this season? You know, how quickly are you going to get to the World Series? And there's just the expectation
that's
level is
tough.
lower.
Yep, that's tough to manage in those situations. And you know, once, you know, the Orioles get their starting pitching, you know, as these prospects start coming up, they get that figured out. They can pitch with the other teams, they'll be fine. And that's what it really comes down to. It's a lot of pitching. I'm interested to see where this whole spin rate thing go. You know, there's obviously something going on. You know, performance enhancing or something with pitchers, and you know, it may not be steroids, but something's going on. But I'm sure there'll be an adjustment made. It's just interesting to kind of see the back and forth. I hope they don't do any crazy rule changes though. To you know, baseball, one of the things about it has been pretty much the same. You know, for 130 years or whatever. You kind of like to see it continue that way. They don't need to move the mound or do anything crazy.
Exactly. Trevor Bauer posted a thing on his Twitter last night, and he actually had a ball that had come out of the box that they were getting ready to play with, right? Because you know, they rub up the balls a little bit, put a little dirt on the ball, right? So he had a ball that had just come out, and he held it like this. He squeezed it with his hand like this, and then he opened his hand, and the ball didn't drop, and he had nothing on his hand. And he's like,
wow.
He's like, MLB, am I going to get fined for this?
Yep.
Like, Trevor, don't poke the bear. Don't poke the bear.
That's funny.
But
that just goes to show you what, if they're that tacky though, it's going to make you. I mean, of course you can get your spin rate up and do, you know, voodoo magic with the ball.
Yeah, so, but he's holding it with his hand completely closed like this, and he didn't have anything on his hand. And then once he opens it, the ball doesn't come off. It just kind of sticks to his hand. So he's like, what am I doing? Right? I mean, I'm not doing anything. It's whatever you guys are rubbing on these balls, blaming us. So awesome. Well, thank you for your time. We'll have to do this throughout the season again. I'm trying to put together an American League East version of this, where we get a representative from every team and just have a night where we just talk. So if you're interested, I'd love to have you back.
Yep. Thanks, Bill.
Perfect. Top fans, this has been Dale, and he is an awesome Orioles fan. And like I said, he's kind of made me a little bit of an Orioles fan with some of these names. So by all means, like everything, subscribe. We'll be doing this more, and we just appreciate your time, Dale. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate it.